Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode. We are down to the final basically, but before we get there, we're gonna be looking back at the semi-finals, and we've got the whole crew back again. So Ahmed Faraaz, Wasim, Mubeen, Jason, welcome, guys.
Good to be
Good
back.
to be here, man.
So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna delay it too much. The first thing that we've noticed, as we were just chatting before we started recording, Jason pointed out that Ahmed Faraz has swapped out his Spain jersey. So Ahmed Faraz, you want to kick us off? How does it feel to be out of the tournament?
I actually swapped out my Spain jersey for an Italian jersey
Oh no,
right
man.
here.
He set
because
you up there.
because
Yeah, this
I, I,
guy.
I I don't want England to win this. But yeah, looking back at that semi-final, I was actually a bit impressed. I thought it was going to be a bit of a walkover. It was a good display from the Spanish players. They dominated that midfield. Sergio Busquets was insane. Um, the attackers, they caused so many problems for Italy's defense, but the problem was the finishing at the end of the day. And Oyarzabal, I wasn't really a big fan of him. He was quite underwhelming, and his performance didn't warrant his selection. He missed so many good chances. Somebody that I was impressed with was Danny Olmo. He was quality on the night. He never stopped running. Verratti didn't know what to do with him. Chiellini was sick of the sight of him. And yeah, it was very unlucky. It was a very unlucky end to the tournament for Spain. It's funny though, because in the lead up to the semi-finals, Spain were quite underwhelming. And I was one of the people that said that they didn't warrant their place in the semi-final. But then they played the way they did. And then Italy, on the other hand, they were good from game one. And then when they came to the semi-final, they weren't as good as before. Yeah, but at the end of the day, Italy managed to snag it on penalties.
Yeah, it was a very entertaining game, and I think it probably was one of the best games for Spain in the entire tournament. Unlucky for them. It was, going all the way to penalties, quite an interesting game, and I think Italy, for me, a bit lucky to go through just on that performance. But they have their off game before the final. It's always good because that means they can improve in the next game. I just wanted to focus a little bit more on that midfield battle. So I'm going to bring in our resident midfielder, Jason. What were your thoughts on how Spain and Italy's midfield lined up and the outcome of that battle? Who do you think won it? Ahmed Faraz mentioned that Busquets was brilliant. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, no, definitely. When you see a guy like Busquets not having the most speed, most acceleration, but the speed of thought is really what separates him from the rest. You have this guy cutting lines from just outside his box. He's able to find players just on the half turn, maybe just in their own half, in the opposition's half. So that's always a joy for me. I think somebody like Pedri, 18 years old, stepping up to actually say, look here, guys, I'm going to take this game by the scruff of the neck. I think at the end of 90 minutes, he still had 100% pass completion rate. So that speaks volumes to the sort of player that he is, not really being phased by the actual moment that he was in. A bit underwhelming from Italy's point of view. They had controlled most of the games leading up to the semi-final, as Ahmed Faraz said, but I think they were maybe overthrown by that movement that Spain had. A lot of things that maybe question that should England play with a fluid midfield, will they actually be able to cope? So yeah, it was such a joy to see just the number of quality players that were in that battle and just the quality that we saw in that battle. So yeah, it was really good to watch.
Yeah, when you mentioned England over there, I thought I'll get a bit of a reaction from Mubeen, but he's got his poker face on. So he's not going to be drawn into that too early. But yeah, I mean, definitely a good battle in the midfield, which Spain definitely won. If you look at the Italians, and I mentioned this just before they scored, that when these games are so tight, you need to take your chances. And AF also mentioned that Spain were a bit wasteful with their chances. Mubin, how did you see the game playing out?
Yeah. Again, I think, like Jason said, I think Italy were probably taken aback by the movement there of the Spanish. I didn't, and I said in the last episode, I didn't see the Spanish team causing any problems for the Italians, but it was the complete opposite. I think they did all the play on the evening. I think maybe a lot of it also could be because of Spinazzola not starting because of his injury. I think a lot of the play throughout the tournament was derived from that left flank through him and Insigne from the left side. So yeah, I still think it's a good final between England and Italy to come. England gonna win. Just put the disclaimer in there.
It is getting a bit ahead of yourself.
But there were some positives on the evening for Spain. Like Ahmed Faraaz said, Dani Olmo was superb on the night. I think in a big game like that, if I were the manager, I would have started Morata up front. Despite his lack of form, so to say, he's still a proven striker. And I think in the final third, where they were very disappointing, I think had Morata started, I think maybe one or two of those chances most likely been converted. Yeah, that's my take.
You know, something I saw on Twitter, a lot of people were saying that Morata does the brilliant, but then the basic stuff is where he tends to go wrong, which is quite an interesting take. And, you know, I suppose that's the difference often between world class and just being very good, is that you're consistent, man. And, you know, to do something amazing is all good and well, but when it's a simple chance or you know, something a bit more straightforward and you don't put that away, it does put the team under pressure. So Wasim, to bring you in over here with regards to the Italians, I mean, obviously, like Mubeen said, they miss Spinazzola, but do you think going forward they're going to stick with their same team, especially after being run over in midfield a bit, or do you foresee any changes within the 11 going forward?
They have made changes as the tournament went on. A few players got a chance, so I think they will make maybe one or two changes just to sort of counter the English style of play. But I think that largely will keep it the same, and they'll probably give them the guys that didn't perform in the semi-final, maybe give them another chance to prove themselves, seeing that they did so well up until the semi. So the way I see it is they got the bad performance out of the way, which can only be good for Italian supporter, because the final, obviously, it's going to be a momentous occasion. So the players will rise to it, and the fact that what I've noticed, especially in the big leagues, is when a team doesn't perform well, they generally perform very well the next game, because it's almost like they got the kick up the backside. So I think it's going to be good for the Italians that they got their bad result out of the way, or the bad game out of the way, but having still made it through to the next round. Whereas a lot of other teams, they do it the other way around. They play well, like Spain did, but they don't get the result, so then they end up going out. So I think it's only a positive for Italy. Definitely.
I just want to jump in on that, what you're saying, Wasim. I think maybe they could do the change. Maybe if you guys maybe want to just comment on this, but I feel like Immobile hasn't been playing up to his standard that he showed when he was at Lazio. So maybe having somebody like Belotti up there, maybe a bigger ball just to occupy both Harry Maguire, John Stones could be interesting. Maybe frees up Insigne, Chiesa, maybe even Bernardeschi, depending on who starts. So yeah, just looking at that, what are you guys' thoughts on maybe actually just changing the front nine and then just seeing actually number 9 rather, and then just seeing what would happen?
I see the golfer Ineos coming out. You're talking about the front 9.
I think I'll jump in there.
Yeah, go for it.
I think that probably wouldn't be a bad idea, considering that England play with a back 3. I think the Italians generally throughout the tournament, like I said, attack from that left flank with through balls, and they depend on Insignia space, obviously, to get past the centre backs. But with Walker's, I mean, he's quite fast and also very strong. So, and Insigne's obviously half his size. So they would probably, or it would probably make sense to change it up a bit, to have someone stronger up front to hold up the ball, and then obviously play it through. Once he's thrown in one or two of those centre backs.
But I think it's tough to make changes like that. Like Wasim mentioned, they're probably gonna stick with the guys who got them there, and if it's not working, then make a change. Which I think the Italian manager hasn't been shy of making changes. They make good substitutions. And I was also watching the game and thinking the same thing. Immobile off because he just wasn't contributing in any way. And it depends what they do. Like, do they move Insigne to the center, like you say, or do they bring Bellotti on? It all depends on the situation. But what I've also noticed, and I just want to get some more input from you guys on this before we move on to the other side of the draw, is when these teams get to the final 5 minutes of regulation time, and they start thinking about this extra time coming, and a lot of teams are actually making substitutions fairly early, 60-65 minutes, with that in mind. It's almost like they go into like a autopilot mode where they're not really aggressively trying to win. Like at some point, early in extra time, for example, there's kind of just that acceptance that this is going to go to penalties, and they kind of, whoever's on the field, that's the guys we have left, and they play almost for penalties, and maybe try and nick a goal. But it is a challenge, obviously, to get the right guys on the field, and it's not like other sports where you can bring people back on. Which was an interesting take I heard on the show recently, where they said, why don't they just allow you in extra time to bring someone back on? Because once they're off, they can't come back on. But if they're the best player, maybe you can bring them on, or bring guys on once, not full rolling substitutions. But how do you think these teams, if they have to consider obviously extra time, right? So how do they manage that when they make their changes? Like if you take Immobile off, then you kind of stuck with whatever you go to for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I was actually gonna bring this point up when we spoke about the England Denmark game, because I saw the Danish manager, he made his subs quite early, and you could see, like, when those Danish players got the extra time, you could see the fatigue like affecting them, like, clearly. So yeah, like I think it's a whole mental thing, like you said. Like when you come to those like final few minutes before extra time happens, or like it's just in the head, like, let's just try to ride this out. Let's just try to get past the finish line. And in the England Denmark game, there was a moment that like both of them weren't trying. Like when it got to like 88, 89 minutes, both of them weren't trying. It was just like accepting the fact that we're going to extra time. We have an extra half an hour to win this game. So I don't know. Like I feel like some managers, they should actually bring that up and work on that as a way, like as an extra weapon in the armory. Like, okay, the opposition is probably going to sit back. This is your guys' time to pounce. We will be able to win this, and then you guys won't have to play that extra half an hour.
Yeah,
I don't
there
know
are
what you guys think about it.
there are moments in the game like that. Yeah, I suppose you have to kind of read which 10 minutes are you gonna now really go hard and attack, and when you're gonna sit back and kind of just manage yourself through the 90 minutes, and then potentially the extra 30, which we've seen a lot of games go, the full 120 minutes, and get to penalties, which I think going out, we can switch across now to the England Denmark game, where again another game going to extra time. England won with Harry Kane converting a penalty. Well, his penalty was saved, and he converted the follow up. But I mean, that was good from him to follow up like that. And unfortunately for the keeper, he parried the ball straight back instead of to the side, if you want to really be critical about it. But at the end of the day, I think the English were good value for their win. I was pleasantly surprised with Denmark. They played really well, quick, direct football. That it proves that if you move the ball quickly, the defenders are going to be on the back foot, and that's kind of what you want. And for Italy, I foresee that being a bit of a template where if they can move the ball quickly through the midfield and get it up top, and guys are running backwards, it could be something that's beneficial for them. But yeah, with the English, I'll bring Mubeen in first, seeing as that was his team. How did you feel about that performance, and what does it say about the team going towards the final?
Yeah, I wasn't too impressed with the performance. Um, but in the same breath, I think, like we discussed in previous episode, I think Southgate has a plan, and is sticking to the plan. Um, yeah, the performance wasn't the greatest. I think they went there to get the result that they needed, and they rode the game out. Um, look, they obviously attacked, but the Danish press, like you mentioned earlier, they spread the ball quick and fast, and I think they played that brand of football since their second defeat, so basically since their last group game. Um, that I think they changed the style of play to that, and it's quite refreshing to see a team play in that way. Going forward, and we're looking ahead to the final. Again, I think Southgate's going to stick to his guns. He's going to stick to his game plan. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a change again on the right flank, on the right side of the attacking three. I think that's the side he's been rotating with. I think Foden started initially at the beginning of the tournament, then it was Saka, then Sancho coming in the game before last. Um, so it would be interesting to see who he does start on that right side wing. Saka had a good game, in my opinion. So yeah, it's interesting to see what he do, how he lines that right side up for the final. But like I said in the last episode, it's coming home. It's coming home. Tell the world it's coming home. So yeah.
So with that, that's coming home. You saw Kasper Schmeichel's response to that. Was it ever there? England never won it before, so I think that coming home thing is just people carrying it over from the World Cup. But yeah, I mean they're playing at home, which they had that advantage all the time. So it's theirs to lose if you look at it that way. But a couple of talking points from there, and we'll come back to the selection a bit later. But I just wanted to get Wasim just to jump in here and talk about the Grealish substitution. So Grealish came on like he always does, and then 30 minutes later, I think he got subbed off again for a defender because they were ahead. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Mubeen says. Like Southgate has a plan, and when it goes according to plan, he then sticks with it, and he doesn't change from it. So what happened was they were behind, or it was level at that point. So he had to make the substitution. He was forced to make it, and bring on Grealish to try and influence the game, which he did. And then when he got the desired result of being in front 2-1 in extra time, I think he just thought like, now I'm gonna shut up shop and I'm not gonna concede. So if I have to sacrifice one of my attacking players, then I will do that because that's what we need to do to get to the final. So I think his mentality is right in terms of he's got a plan. He knows like if we're ahead, we close the door. But if we're behind, we can use our attacking players to our advantage from the bench, the likes of Rashford, Sancho, and Grealish. So so I think that is what he did. Some will say it's unfair on Grealish because he came on as a sub and he's being subbed again. But I think for the greater cause of the team, he did it, and it paid off. So I think that's what Southgate needs to take the credit for. Probably, if it's done again in the final and they end up, drawing and it goes to penalties, then it's a different ballgame. But I think he got what he wanted, so we can't fault him for that.
Yeah, I think there's just too much that people read into it because the old school way is, you can't do that, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, it's how you manage the situation. So if you pull Grealish off in that situation, and the discussion between Southgate and Grealish is good, he explains why, and Grealish buys into it, there'll be no issues. I mean, there's nothing to argue about, and I think that's where the media probably make more out of it than what it actually is. Because if you're in a good environment in terms of your team, then things like that work out. Like before the game, most of these players know the moments that they're going to be called upon, and they kind of know their roles. And once you know your role and you buy into it, then the team harmony is quite good. So yeah, I don't think it was that big of a deal. But at the end of the day, you do what you need to do to put yourself in a position to win, which I think Southgate is doing really well. The other big talking point, obviously, the free kick was amazing. I think Denmark was good value for that. And I don't know if you noticed, but in the lead up to the free kick, obviously there was a free kick before that from a bit further back, and the Danes do some weird stuff when they line up for free kicks. They make like a wall in front of the wall, and everyone's tangled, and it's like they're trying to buy another free kick closer in a better position, which they were successful in doing, and then going from an indirect free kick to an area where they can take a direct hit at goal. I thought that was quite interesting. A bit of gamesmanship there just to get a better position for the free kick. So yeah, the Danes were really good. But then on the flip side of that gamesmanship, you get the debate about Raheem Sterling. So Jason, what are your thoughts on that apparent or alleged dive from Sterling?
I was grappling with this quite a bit when I saw it. So I'd actually napped for like the first 5 minutes of that extra time period. Now woke up because England was starting to press, and when I saw that, I had called that it was immediately a dive, and then they went to VAR, and then they still confirmed that it was a penalty. I was very shocked, and for Denmark to actually go out that way by somewhat of a dubious call, it was a tad bit frustrating. But just like you say, like in the age of VAR and where they can check everything, Denmark winning that second free kick for that free kick goal that they scored, I think it was a bit silly from Shaw to be holding on to Christensen. Like, you have cameras on you, everything can be seen. So yeah, I think that was okay. I think the penalty, I don't know. I've seen foreign players get crucified for throwing themselves to the ground in the English Premier League, but now English guy does it and suddenly he's just winning his team a penalty. So I think double standards are very evident. It's a bit of a bit of a sad one, man. But I mean, what
Yeah,
can you do? England's
refereeing.
in the final. Yeah.
Exactly. Refereeing is difficult, man, because at the end of the day, it's subjective. Very few
Yeah.
of these calls are objective. So when it's someone's opinion, and I mean, how do you figure out if someone dived or not? Because when things are in slow motion, it looks a lot different than it is in real time. So, Sim, what did you see in that
Yeah,
situation?
I wanted to say on that, with regards to that, I don't think it was a penalty. I obviously also not support England in that game, so I'm slightly biased in that sense. But if you look at it, there was contact. So the reason the referee gave the penalty was because there was contact from, I think the one player touches his thigh and the other player gets his hip from the other side. So some people will say that's definite contact. So, he went down and it's a penalty. But I think sometimes we need to realize it is a contact sport. So, as soon as a guy touches your leg, it doesn't mean you have to go down. Could you have stayed on your feet? And in my opinion, he could have. So I think that's the issue. VAR couldn't overturn it because they saw there was contact, but the referee, deemed that the contact was sufficient for him to call a penalty. So I think that's the thing. Like, they couldn't overturn it because the referee already gave the penalty, and there was contact. But if he had not given a penalty, I probably think it wouldn't have then been given as a penalty thereafter. So I think that's the thing. As you said, it's very subjective, so it's very difficult. But to be fair to the English, they had a better claim earlier on in the game during the 90 minutes where Harry Kane went down. And a lot of people thought that was a penalty, myself included, and that it wasn't given. So I think overall, probably the English do then deserve to go through. And it's unlucky for Denmark, but if you consider they lost their first two games, they also lost the semi-final. That's 3 games in one tournament. Do they then deserve to make the final? I think not. So I think that's where it ends up.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like you say, it's a contact sport, which I find hard to believe a lot of the time when I watch the games, because certain contact is fine, and then other times contact, as soon as you touch someone, it's a foul, which it should be consistent, right? And unfortunately, it just isn't consistent. So, if just to bring you in, and I'm gonna go back to Mubeen's original point about England's right flank. What do you think in terms of selection there? Do you see Southgate sticking with 4-2-3-1 and going with Saka or putting someone else in that spot, or do you see a change in formation?
I think that Sancho will get a start. I think Saka will drop out. Mainly the fact because Emerson is going to be playing at left back. So everybody knows Emerson isn't the greatest defender. He's good going forward, but he's not really the greatest defender. And I think somebody like Sancho will cause him much more problems than somebody like Saka would. And on the flip side, I think to nullify something like that, Italy will probably go with 3 defenders. So I think it will be the Bonucci and Chiellini, but they'll be joined by Toloi, who looked actually quite good when he came off the bench against Spain. So I think it's going to be a good contest, but I think Sancho will be the starting right winger, just to add that extra bit of flair and pace on that right wing.
I wonder if AF would have said Sancho was going to start before he joined United. I don't know. I'm not convinced.
That's actually what I was going to ask, man. And maybe it's because I'm wearing this Arsenal jersey and I have a bit of bias. But when I look at Saka's overall contribution to the team, I'm a bit concerned if AF is thinking Sancho's going to start. Okay, maybe technically speaking, what he's saying, Emerson maybe isn't the best defender. But I think what Saka offers you is something different to Sancho, where you know, okay, Sancho's just going to be getting the ball to feet, maybe taking them on. Okay, that's good. But Saka somehow has this ability to make these runs that like people are not seeing. And I think that was evident with the first goal that they scored. He had made a run and Denmark had set up almost in, not a low block, so to say, but they had quite a few defensive numbers. And Saka somehow still managed to make the run. Kane picked out the pass, got the ball across. So, yeah, just to add some fire to this conversation, I think Saka is going to start. And I think Saka should start. Maybe just based on his overall contribution in these recent games.
Yeah, with
and
you
not
on
because AFC United supporter and his son.
With you on that one, I mean, besides, if I take all the club support out, I think Southgate kind of showed his hand in what he thinks is his best 11, especially if he's going with that 4-2-3-1 formation, which I think he might stick with, or more likely to stick with that than to make any changes. And that means he starts the same 11. There is a sort of a tactical thing that I've seen is that the teams like to get to the byline and then cut it back. And that's where Sterling has been so successful in scoring. And that's where all these own goals have come from as well, where teams are getting to the byline and cutting it back in. And I think both Sancho and Saka probably offer the similar thing going forward, where I think Sancho will edge him because he's probably a better dribbler one-on-one and he can take people on a bit better. Whereas Saka has that bit of Arsenal in him where he's looking to cut back and then bring guys into play who are making late runs. So I think that's probably the only position. And then Mubeen also mentioned they might play three at the back. I don't know. I'm feeling like they're gonna go with a 4. So let's just go around quickly. We'll start with Wasim and then work our way around. Prediction for the final. How do you see the game playing out? And then also, who do you think is going to be the man of the match? I'll just put you on the spot there.
I think in the final, I'm going to go with Italy for 1-0. I think England have done well, and they've, to reach the final is amazing. But I think that Italy is going to produce a old-fashioned Italian performance, keep a clean sheet, and defend like crazy. And then they're going to pinch a goal as well. So I'm going to go with the man of the match will be Jorginho. I think he's been amazing for Italy. His defensive work has been superb, and he kind of controls the middle. Obviously, they didn't do too great against Spain in terms of that, but I think that was because of the way Spain played with the false 9. But I'm going with 1-0 Italy.
Ahmed Faraaz?
Look, I want Italy to win, but I think England will win it about maybe by 1 goal, so maybe a 2-1 scoreline. And I think that Harry Kane will get man of the match and golden boot.
That's looking good. The odds on that are quite high. I think I'll keep Mubeen on ice for a bit. So Jason, you up? Just let it build up for Mubeen a little, man.
Get
excited
100%. I think I'm gonna have to side with AF as well. I know we had just argued now about who's gonna start in the right wing, but I think England, having played almost all of their games at home, with near full stadium, crowd's gonna pump them up. I think England edge it. I'm gonna be a bit controversial. I think it's gonna be like a 3-2 because both sides can attack, but also both sides are leaking quite a few goals. And I think Italy have a chance as long as Jordan Pickford's playing. Sorry to say, but yeah, guy also showed his hand. Looks a bit nervous sometimes. Man of the match for me, I think I'm gonna go with Raheem Sterling.
Nice, a safe bet. And maybe you'll get rewarded for another dive. Who knows? Mubeen,
Maybe.
the floor is yours, mate. Before I come with my rebuttal.
Yeah, there's obviously no guesses. Like I said earlier, it's coming home. Definitely England. I think I'm gonna join AFC on a 2-1 scoreline, and I think again I'm gonna join AF and agree and say probably Kane, Captain Fantastic, to get a man of the match. Um, I think he had a good game in the last game as well, and like I mentioned in the previous episode, I think the momentum, he's got momentum now, so I see him taking that into the final. 2-1 England, and the Euro Championship badge for England as well.
Nice. And then the whole team can get knighted also. Which people are already saying Sir Gareth Southgate, it's coming and all those types of things. But look, at the end of the day, for me, before I go on to why I'm gonna go with Italy, obviously I support them, so I'm going with Italy. But everything's been going England's way. If you look at it, they've managed to play most of their games, well, all of the games, but except one at Wembley, which is their fortress, their home stadium. They, a lot of the 50-50 calls are going their way as well. They haven't had too many injury issues, like all these small things that kind of, you need that in a tournament. You need to have all your players fit and not have any mishaps or any major injuries and so on. And when things are falling into place like that, then you kind of do fall into that trap where you believe that it's gonna happen. And the problem with that is when you get to the final and nothing bad has happened yet, it's gonna happen this time. So for me, I think I have a feeling there's gonna be a red card in this game. I don't know who or how. I think Calvin Phillips might be a candidate to get sent off. Because with the Italians, there's a lot of that gamesmanship, which I spoke about with the Danes as well. So, a bit of needle. And when emotions are high like that, anything can happen. So I see a red card. I also see this game going all the way to penalties, at least extra time, because, we have to go to work the next day and I have to stay up till 2 a.m. to watch it finish. But yeah, I think it's gonna go all the way to extra time and to penalties, and I think Italy will shade it with a Jorginho penalty. It is the best penalty taker on their team, so I'll go with Wasim on that, and that's my man of the match. So looking forward to a crack of a final, gents, and then that's it for us today. But we'll catch up again after the final to celebrate for some of us, and for some of us, we'll be in AF's shoes after a loss. Cool. Okay, guys. So yeah, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Go to our socials, Sportycast, and all things football. And we'll be back in a couple of days. So enjoy the final.